what people are going to need to come to terms with as a result of this as well is that Bernie Sanders is just like, he's just a politician. He's just a guy. He's just a conduit. What's more important than him are the policies. If we don't have the policies, we don't have anything. It doesn't matter if it's Bernie Sanders or if it's a Freaky Friday situation where he changes brains with Sarah Palin and it's Sarah Palin saying all of these things and advocating for all of these things. It ultimately, if you're talking the talk and walking the walk, that's what we need. We don't need anything else. It doesn't matter who's doing it.
What made you get more involved in politics? And I know that's a weird question because it'd be really strange to be an apolitical music listener. But I've noticed, that's when I started seeing you a lot online. I would be like, oh, whoa, this is a really funny comment. Is that the music guy from the YouTubes? Whoa, what's he doing roasting Donald Trump here and stuff like that?
Well, I think at least in my own content, there's always been reason to talk about politics when it comes to certain records. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny because there are people who have this perception of there was a time when Anthony was political and there was a time when he wasn't political. And I guess it was kind of easy to be perceived that way or not really say much when I felt like in the political mainstream, there wasn't really a whole lot that I felt like was representing my point of view. But the more relevant and the more it seemed like, hey, Bernie Sanders actually kind of has a shot here. I personally felt like I had more of a reason to say things.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it's tons of records, like To Pimp a Butterfly, my most popular fucking review. And one of the most, socially conscious and aware hip hop concept albums of the past 20 years.
Easily.
Yeah. It's you can't exactly say my content or my opinions haven't had a political edge or haven't been politically guided in some kind of way, shape, or form previously. You know what I mean? I feel like you can't really analyze a record like that, or really even Kendrick Lamar in general, without taking serious notice of the social and political implications of a lot of what he's saying and trying to sell you in his music. I mean, sure, there are people that listen to his stuff and just vibe to it. But if you're a serious music critic and a music reviewer and you want to talk about Kendrick Lamar and explain the point of Kendrick Lamar to other people, not addressing the political aspects of what he does is just kind of not talking about the elephant in the room.
Well, that'd be strange if someone was like, I love Black Star for the beats. And I would be like, okay. Is there nothing more to this? Or
I love Black Star for the beats. Talib Kweli just has a really cool flow, and that's it. It's there's not. Really
I have no idea what he's rapping about. But I'm sure it's cool.
That Immortal Technique guy just sounds badass.
Yeah, he does. Right? Outrageous. But then, so Bernie Sanders, I guess, was one of the times when you particularly thought you'd start thrusting yourself, I guess, in the Twitter arena of that side of stuff. Did you find that also came with its own aspects of it? Because you were just talking earlier about avoiding beef and avoiding that kind of drama, but I know as soon as you start involving yourself in Twitter, it's a nonstop flood.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I embracing that and commenting more on that, and let me dial it back a little bit and just say, prior to this, I had been a Green Party voter. I had protested things like the Iraq War regularly, which as a teenager landed me in a Newsweek piece where they were like, oh, hey, politically active teenagers, what are they thinking? So I mean, it's politics from then to my concentration in political science in college and planning to be a political type of reporter at NPR when I started interning over there, because that's why the fuck I was there. That was something I was either planning doing. I was planning on doing something with that. I was planning on doing something either there or with accounting, because it didn't seem like music was going to kind of be the path. And, but then the more I went along and tried to go through the motions of doing that, and, I was kind of on that track, the more it was music was kind of pulling me in the other direction. And, the more I just started to pursue that further and further. And, not to say that it's not an admirable path. I mean, there are some of my favorite online personalities have kind of taken exactly that that route. And that's why I follow them and, love the stuff that they do. But I was just personally pulled in the other direction, but had never stopped kind of, paying attention and following what was going on. But again, in a world of like your options are Obama, Romney, Hillary, Trump, it just didn't really seem like, is anybody here for stopping the wars or anything? Like, can we like legalize marijuana yet? Or, can police brutality stop being a thing?
Yeah.
when those are your options, it's kind of hard to have the enthusiasm to, I'm going to risk my platform and risk my brand for, this, what I mean? Because in a way, and I understand a lot of people see it as this, it's kind of it is kind of like that. You do risk alienating your audience if you're going to be politically vocal. However, I sort of, I guess, took a bit of a risk and banked on the fact that typically music communities tend to shift pretty left. So if I want to voice these opinions, like, shouldn't be a problem. And the people who do have an issue with it, I mean, I'm not making Bernie Sanders pitches in my fucking reviews. So if you don't like what the fuck I have to say on Twitter, then just don't pay attention to what I have to say on Twitter. You can keep watching my YouTube videos or whatever.
And do you review Toby Keith or stuff like that? I figured that might be the crowd that would be a little upset at you.
No, I haven't reviewed any Toby Keith yet, but country's coming up a little bit in the internet age. Not to say that country hasn't always been there, but the more the internet becomes more of a just a popular platform for every culture in America, which there are many different cultures in America. The more you're starting to see somewhat outsider country artists or country artists that have a bit more of an alternative sound and message starting to make serious headway in the industry, because unfortunately country music has really become, in a way, almost like a propaganda arm, where you're either reinforcing these very kind of nationalistic or patriotic points of view, or you are completely sanitizing the music and the platform of any will to address any like social issues or struggles that anybody in that community is like really going through, and then clipping that or pointing to kind of the root causes of that. In today's country industry, you would never have, like a Johnny Cash doing the types, or rather the type of, prison reform work that he was doing with his live albums and his public advocacy. Like that's just not something that would happen anymore.
Not from that side of the aisle anyway.
Come again?
I said not from that side of the aisle anyway, in terms of musically, right?
For sure. But well, I mean, I think it's kind of an issue generally in much of the music industry. I think there are a lot of artists that would kind of risk that these days. I mean, in fact, I think there are a lot of rappers who are kind of content to stay on the sidelines of this current political discussion, because there is definitely a risk when you're talking about being a pop rapper whose popularity and image has transcended hip hop, and a majority of your audience is white and just very simple people who just kind of like you for your singles, you know what I mean? And don't really care about your struggle, where you came from, what your message is. Now there are some voices who, try to do their best to, highlight things and explain things in as simple terms as they can. Shout out to Ice-T, the God, for doing.
I was about to say, I wonder if he's going to mention Ice Cube, who has kind of been lately. I don't know what he's thinking or feeling.
Not so much Ice Cube, though. We can address Ice Cube, but Ice-T with his career and then his transition into Law and Order SVU. A lot of his following is, just like kind of, we've just been making fun of them on the internet relentlessly, but a lot of his following is like Karens, Yeah. There are a lot of fucking Karens following Ice-T. And the other day I saw this ridiculous tweet where it was just like this Gen Xer or boomer lady who's just like, I've just never understood why white people can't say the N-word and black people can call each other the N-word. And, you know, like, obviously there is just way too much like historical context to that to put it together in a tweet and like, you know, write a whole dissertation on it, because that's kind of one of the terrible things about Twitter. It's like, it's okay for putting a message out there, but it's terrible for fucking context. And, you know, the best way that I think he could put it was just like, you know, if the term doesn't apply to you, don't use it. You know, if you're not fat, you shouldn't be saying people aren't fat. If you're not this, you shouldn't be saying people are this, or blah, 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 which is just like, ugh, that's such a dumbed down fucking
very diplomatic
version of why, but
yeah. I mean, if it works, I'm here for it. It's better than Nation of Islam stuff that's anti-Semitic.
You know, here's the thing: like, that explanation might get someone to stop using the word or stop wanting to use the word, but like, it doesn't get them to understand. Ultimately, what you really want out of that exchange is like, you want people to understand like systematic oppression is like ultimately what you would would probably be the best outcome.
I mean, lofty goals, but yeah. I mean? Yeah.
But you know, but when you're an actor who, you know, is on a cop show and you know, you're talking to somebody who's aged 45 to 65 and you know, and it's on Twitter and their grammar is terrible, like there's no hope of getting to that point. There's nothing that you could say. Like, hey, look at this what the fuck is his name? I'm blanking on his name, but I'll throw another name in there. Sure. You know, hey, here's a link to an hour-long Angela Davis talk. You know what I mean? Like, just watch this. You know what I mean? There's no way that you're going to be like, hey, you know, just read this Cornel West piece. You know?
Oh, it'd be amazing if you did, but yeah, no, I get what you're saying. In what 256 characters, there's not much you can do. There's not really a long history of the systemic racism of the United States.
Exactly. So, you know, there are some people who do try to do what they can with their platform, I suppose, to kind of explain those things and steer people in, I guess, what is maybe the right direction. Unfortunately, within what's going on with Ice Cube is, I don't know how ill-intentioned a lot of his posts are. Not that what he has been saying isn't batshit insane, and you know, not that there aren't like some nefarious elements to some of the stuff that he's posting, but a lot of what he has been putting up, I read, is just like very vague conspiratorial bullshit that doesn't clearly point to anything really. And honestly, all that ends up doing is creating a void where you allow anybody and everybody who's reading that to project whatever they feel like is the problem with the world onto what you're saying, which is why when you go into those responses of any number of those tweets, you see the Black Israelites in there, you see QAnon in there, hashtagging like, oh, he's waking up, the awakening is here. You know, like, and you see people there who are just like posting alien shit, and you see people in there who are posting like, you know, Jewish questions shit. So like, of course there's any matter of like conspiratorial fuckers down there, because he doesn't really have, he's not posting an understanding or a framework for understanding why everything's fucked up right now. It's just like an image of like, you know, the globe with a hand and it's in impact font. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you know, that's the depth of like what he's posting. And then also putting up something where it's like, you know, I might dive into this later. I was quite interested in the post that he made speaking to all black people, and then he was posting something about the cube, there being like a black cube.
I didn't understand that one. Someone told me that that's like an anti-Semitic trope or something. I didn't fully get it.
I'm very curious about it. I want to know more about everybody kind of coming back to the black cube, or probably not me as a white person. I don't know, but I want to know the origins of the black cube and everyone's relation to the black cube.
I feel this is a rabbit hole you will regret.
But the thing is, like, you know, one thing that I know about Ice-T and a lot of different rappers, because I do have kind of a you know, working knowledge of you know, people who kind of operate in these circles just because of, Wikipedia research and stuff like that. But there are a lot of very popular, successful rappers who are deeply embedded with the Nation of Islam, or just like,
Okay.
fuck with Farrakhan heavy. And when, that's kind of the circle that you operate in, you're not too far removed from
Public
the
Enemy.
anti-Semitism stuff, because I mean, there's tons of footage of Farrakhan saying anti-Semitic shit all the time. So,
Yeah.
I guess there are some people who, view him as almost just like a general type of positive force and figure for Black liberation and civil rights in a way. And I suppose he does have his connections to that, but there are some people who go a bit deeper and really drink the ideological Kool-Aid of a lot of what he's saying too. And sometimes it's hard to tell who's on what side. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you this: do you think that there has been, or have we started to hear COVID music? Like, I know so many people are producing stuff in their basement, but stuff like just signs of the times, speaking into the generation.
Yeah. There's definitely some prime examples of that. I mean, there are a handful of quite a few songs, really, actually, where you'll hear a COVID bar every once in a while. You have artists who are recording albums in quarantine, and it's almost like a concept, like, oh, here's our lo-fi messy quarantine album that we had to do in quarantine because that's where we all are. There's also the new Charlie XCX record, which is great, where it's literally about being in quarantine. So it's not just recorded in quarantine, but the mindset, the experience, the feelings, all of that is like, becomes the story, becomes the theme. And there's also that new Chromeo EP, which is very tongue-in-cheek and very fun and bouncy. They're kind of a synth funk duo with
I know they're Canadians. They're fellow Canadians.
Okay. So Chromeo is great. I don't know if you've heard the new EP, but there are songs on there about Clorox wipes and sitting in bed all day and doing nothing. So
and they're kind of like trademark disco house funk kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's their trademark sound, and it's not as high gloss as their biggest stuff, but they have some fun songs on there about just some COVID stuff. So yeah, there's COVID music out there. There's pandemic music out there. It's there.
What about
Nicki Minaj just had a bar on the new 6ix9ine track about a pandemic. So
sweet. Oh, I love Nicki.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, what about the political side of the aisle? Because we were just watching Lindsay Ellis's video about wartime music and how the Bush era had such terrible country songs, and Green Day kind of was the anti-war album of that generation. What do you think is coming out?
Rock Against Bush compilations and stuff like that, and yeah, there were a lot of rock bands that were against Bush.
What do you think is the one that speaks to the Trump era?
It's kind of interesting. I think in terms of the past 4 years, nothing has generated like more of a response, musically, artistically speaking, than the events of the past several weeks. All these police brutality protests, and when I say sparking music, I mean sparking like actual popular music that people care about. Nothing has really sparked something like the events of the past several weeks. As far as like anti-Trump music, there's quite a bit of it, but nowhere near as much anti-Bush music as there was.
Well, I was like, you can talk about that. That sounds way more interesting. Like, what do you see coming from that?
There's not as much anti-Trump music as there was anti-Bush music. I think it's almost because like.
I meant the how you said the last 2 weeks have been a lot more like, I guess, I don't know how you put it, like revolutionary for musical explosions or that kind of stuff. Like, where do you see that going? Do you see people directly making protest songs?
You're just talking about an event that so deeply and directly impacts a community of people that are just predominantly participating in the musical zeitgeist of the moment, and that's hip hop. You're talking about this very specific political issue that disproportionately affects the Black community, and you have this genre of music that is at its peak of relevancy and popularity right now, more popular than it's ever been, selling more records than it's ever been, turning more heads than it's ever been. and they're using that platform to just say their side of the story and just sort of counteract, you know, the narrative that everything is fine, and that, you know, if you don't listen to everything a cop says, that you know, a cop tells you when they're arresting you or apprehending you, they can kneel on your neck, or they can shoot you, or they can beat the shit out of you, or, you know, they could push you to the ground, or they can make you bleed out of the back of your head or from your ears or whatever, you know. It's kind of an extension of you know, everything public, not public, but Public Enemy, but you know, NWA was saying. But you know, you're talking about the genre and the community being in a position of leverage that it was not in the 80s and the 90s. So there's actually an opportunity to control the narrative a lot better, and swing things back in, you know, the direction of objectivity and truth, and not just blind favoritism of the police state. You know, Public Enemy, not Public Enemy, I keep thinking Public Enemy. NWA stood out in the way that they did because they were the only group making that type of song at the time. And, you know, socially, in a lot of ways, they paid for it. You know, they caught a lot of heat. There was a lot of police harassment at shows. And, you know, in the eyes of a lot of people, they were kind of Public Enemy number one.
That name again. But yeah, no, you're totally right. You're totally right.
You know, yeah, sure. There's been some Donald Trump music since he got into office. I mean, one of my favorite tracks is, you know, that YG track, "Fuck Donald Trump." But a lot of the Trump music has been kind of, I don't know, kind of weak or not really there. And I think it's because a lot of artists and a lot of people in the left community, like, understand at their core, like, Trump is bad. Like, Trump is terrible. Trump is trash. But Trump is also an extension of just kind of the same old bullshit. You know, really, at the end of the day, like, Trump is just a greedy fucking piece of shit symptom of the system. You know, ultimately, it's the whole conservative apparatus behind him that is, you know, writing the narrative. And
he's not the cause.
You know, and is like turning the gears, and is, you know, the conduit of whatever the donor class is paying and demanding of them, which hasn't changed. You know, has not changed from Bush to Obama to Trump. You know, it's been the same guard. You know, Trump is just a different, you know, sort of representation of it. So, you know, I think that's partially why there hasn't been, like, you know, the moment he got into office, this like huge influx of like really passionate, really like, you know, really passionate, really widely received, you know, music about him.
It would just be so like, we hold these truths to be self-evident, kind of like, you know, Orange Man Bad, the album, would be like, yeah, we know. We don't need to listen to it. Yeah. You
know, it's people, you know, it's kind of like speaking to a choir in a sense, you know. I think the artists who are making the songs they are now about police violence feel as if they are kind of turning people on to an idea, you know, and rightfully so that they are, because I mean, I know in my experience, I run into a lot of people who, you know, they do listen to the artists that I review, like Kendrick Lamar or J. Cole or even JPEG Mafia, you know, all of whom are pretty political, even Brockhampton, you know, and when I'm putting opinions out there, and I could see, you know, their internet activity, I could see the stuff that they interact with that I put out. I could see some of the artists that they're posting and that they're into. And yet when I, you know, maybe post an idea or put an opinion out there on the political side of things, you know, they'll be completely ambivalent to it, or they'll have like a very kind of conservative mindset of like, well, the way things are and the way things have been hasn't, like, you know, burned the whole world down. So why would you change it? Or, you know, oh, you're just like a crazy SJW for saying this or that or the other thing. Or, you know, I guess kind of just adhering to this idea of just what has worked so far is just kind of like what's going to continue to work. So, you know, if it didn't work, or if it wasn't what if it wasn't the way that things should be, then it wouldn't already be this way, right? Which is a very easy mentality for people to kind of fall into if you're not like, paying attention to any of this stuff or reading up on any of this stuff, or, seeing how other countries, run their social safety nets and their prison systems, and how, racial divides play out in countries across the planet.
I won't lie, I'm a little shocked you didn't mention Don't Check Your Vibe by Elon Musk for one of the most revolutionary songs of the past decade.
Yeah. Obviously. And that's another thing, it's, there's, a lot of young white dudes who follow what I do, which is partially why I feel the need to kind of say something, because I feel like I have direct access to this demographic of people that actually need to, kind of hear this shit. Like when I'm speaking, I'm under no like, pretense, of course, that I'm like, yeah, I'm like, telling black people how it is. Like, obviously they know what's going on. I'm not like, the people of color, like, understand what's up.
Yeah.
But there are just a lot of people who follow me who are just like white dudes who, because of the way life has played out for them, they haven't really had a need to analyze the system, and, I know that because I fucking, lived that in high school. Is like when that Newsweek piece dropped, about me protesting and stuff. I got so many negative responses from other people who were in my school, just like idiot bros and jocks who are just like, what, you don't support the troops? Like, what, you want bin Laden to win? Like, you like the terrorists? You don't support the president? Just like really dumbass shit like that. It's really easy to buy into if you don't understand how you're getting fucked.
Yeah.
And you don't really have like kind of a moral compass to operate from, other than like might is right and America's the good guy and whatever we're doing must be for a good cause, and any other country that's kind of fucked up must be fucked up because they fought with us, or they just don't run things good like we do. Or
freedom. They don't love freedom.
Or freedom. They just don't love freedom enough like we do. And that's a result of a really shitty, that was a result of the shitty education system that I went through. And I'm under no assumption that the education system has gotten better since then. So I can only assume that that people are as ignorant as they've ever been. You see it play out on the internet all the time. And I don't know, I just try in my own way to kind of counteract that as best as I can, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that since I've been posting, just political comments and retweets here and there, the amount of flack and hate that I get for it generally amongst my audience has lessened quite a bit. There are some hardcore libertarian stragglers that, like still try to like get at me and are just like, but the government can't do anything. It's just like, okay, whatever. Like, I disagree with you. You're silly, but I don't know. There is a part of me that's also like, yeah, but at least you're not a Nazi. And I feel like, I don't know, every young white guy should be entitled to their libertarian phase, I guess, or something for a minute.
The don't tread on me phase. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Their don't tread on me phase, where they think that like, all problems are individual. Nothing occurs as a result of a greater systematic issue. But what the silliest thing about kind of the libertarian argument or point of view to me is that there's this great emphasis on government-based coercion, which obviously is a thing. I mean, we've been doing nothing but protesting government-based coercion over the past few weeks now with all of this police brutality aimed at these protests. But there's absolutely no attention paid to economic coercion. And it's like, any coercion that happens in the market is just nature, is just natural, is just right and just, and that's just the way it is. And it's like, well, why couldn't you also just like look at the police state and say, well, that's just fine the way that is, that coercion is fine. There's, I think that you can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time. You don't have to accept one. You don't have to totally reject one kind of coercion just to accept the other.
Do you feel like that makes an impact? Like, do you get feedback either in your comments or from your tweets and stuff about trying to, I guess, convert the white members of your audience to that thinking?
Well, I have had responses of people saying, "Hey, thanks for saying what you do and post." It's kind of odd. I have had some people say that, you've changed my mind on a few things. I have seen, polls on the internet where, somebody did like a poll in my subreddit where there was a small portion of people who had said like, yeah, he's changed my mind on things. And there were a lot of people who were like, I either agree with him or I'm just ambivalent to a lot of the political stuff that he says, which is fine too. I feel like changing minds is a very kind of like long-winded process. And it's like something one person can't do by themselves. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that what I'm doing when I'm saying something is like reinforcing an idea that maybe you hear somebody else say somewhere at some point and like, oh, that kind of makes sense, because in a very weird way, that's actually kind of how changing people's minds fucking works. Like when they hear the same thing being reinforced by multiple sources around them. And if I can just be that one of 6 sources that needs to like convince you that, yeah, everyone should have health care. Like if I could be,
we're basically all moving the Overton window together, and that's what needs to happen. It can't just be one person screaming it into the void.
No matter how much personal progress you think you're making with like converting people as somebody who's being politically vocal online, you can't look at converting people as like, you're playing Mario and you're just collecting coins. You know what I mean? Because nobody's collecting the coins all by themselves. Like nobody is just player one, just fucking like no scoping motherfuckers all over the place. Like bam, Bernie voter, bam, Bernie voter, bam, Bernie voter. And just like, headshot, headshot, headshot. Like it's just everybody kind of reiterating the same points over and over and over and like slowly getting everyone else to understand, which is why the internet generally has been so effective at kind of spreading the left message. The type of stuff that Bernie Sanders has been saying and has been turning people onto is the type of shit that back in the day I would only hear at like a Green Party meeting,
Yeah. Which is wonderful. That's the best news to come out of all of this, is that it feels like it's it's in the public consciousness.
For sure. I think unfortunately there are a lot of people who are like super disappointed about Bernie being shut out and Bernie losing, which I'm disappointed about that as well. But this must be your first time paying attention to politics, or you must be a little naive to think that even if Bernie got into office, that it would still be a fucking like you're crawling on your fucking hands and knees and your fingers are bleeding from how hard you're scraping to fucking pull yourself forward just to get a crumb of fucking progress. Like it wouldn't be a walk in the park just because Bernie is in office.
If anything, it would get harder. He'd have a target on his back. They'd be blaming us right now for everything. It's all Bernie's fault.
And there would be a huge propaganda machine from the Democratic mainstream, from the Republican mainstream, and just like trying to sabotage everything and anything that he did. Whereas like, I think from the outside, what people are kind of underestimating and not really understanding is that, oh, well, Joe Biden is old and Joe Biden is weak and Joe Biden doesn't have a real platform and Joe Biden doesn't have this and Joe Biden doesn't have that. And it's like, yeah, exactly. That means like with an organized, very loud and vocal and angry left from the outside, we can criticize him and push him and motivate him to do some of the things that we want, because he's not coming in there with a strong ideology. Obama sort of knew that his MO, or what he wanted his MO to be, was like, yeah, we're going to capitulate to Republicans no matter what we do. Whereas like Joe Biden, I think, is a lot more weak-willed. As a result of that, I think a loud and organized left can make, an impact and can, sort of like, push him in a direction that we want to more easily.
Yeah, I agree.
I think even the Keystone Pipeline thing is promising as of right now.
So is the no tuitions at colleges. So is he hopefully will stay in his bunker the entire time. I'd like that to be a key point of his administration. would probably be.
Sure, absolutely. And and again, I feel like people just need to kind of realize and come to terms with the fact that this was going to be a fight no matter what.
Yep.
And the fight needs to continue past this point. The fight doesn't end just because Bernie Sanders isn't president. And ultimately, like, what people are going to need to come to terms with as a result of this as well is that Bernie Sanders is just like, he's just a politician. He's just a guy. He's just a conduit. What's more important than him are the policies. If we don't have the policies, we don't have anything. It doesn't matter if it's Bernie Sanders or if it's a Freaky Friday situation where he changes brains with Sarah Palin and it's Sarah Palin saying all of these things and advocating for all of these things. It ultimately, if you're talking the talk and walking the walk, that's what we need. We don't need anything else. It doesn't matter who's doing it.
How are you more lucid about this than most of the political commentators I talk to? You're just like, I'm going to elucidate everything that makes sense, and then it's going to be smooth.
Well, because
you're the internet music guy. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Politics is still really tribal, and there are people who, God love them, God bless them. I love them, I bless them. I contribute to some of their Patreons as well. They have turned their love of Bernie into a business model, and it's not the worst business model. It's better than turning your love of Donald Trump into a business model, or your hatred of gay people into a business model, or your ignorance of systematic racism into a business model. There are worse business models,
lucrative too.
But just like in a way, I'm blessed because I don't work in politics. And frankly, a lot of the people who follow me are totally fucking ignorant to politics. So, while I do catch some flack from people who, are a bit more right-leaning or, have stumbled upon a bunch of fucking Ben Shapiro videos, there are a lot of people who watch what I do and, they just like rap music. They just like pop music, and they haven't really thought about any of this stuff. And, I can encourage them to check out an article or, check out a video or a platform of somebody who might be running for Congress in their area. And okay, I'll check it out. I'll look at it. And because of that, it's, I don't need to, play favorites with anybody, and I haven't really sort of like come out in a big way on my social media as like calling out the whole Bernie or bust thing as stupid. Because I do think it is, but I don't think it's really the time to do it right now. I think, I think Bernie or busters need to kind of come to terms a little bit with, the fact that it's kind of over and it's not going to go anywhere from here. And, I think, part of that comes from my opinion that I think, the left, just like, I think the left needs to do a better job of embracing the tactics of the right. And when I say the tactics of the right, I mean the tactics that make them fucking win. And one of the tactics that make them win every fucking time is that they are very, very, very good at establishing working political relationships with people for just the benefit of winning. The term I'm looking for is, to your average milquetoast Republican, it doesn't really matter to them whether or not they're on the same side as, or somebody is voting for their candidate who is, a QAnon person or an alt-righter or
Tea Party
libertarian, or they're very good at establishing these coalitions of convenience.
Yep.
Is what I'm trying to say here. The left is very bad at that. The left is very fucking bad at establishing working relationships of convenience. And I understand why. It's partially because like you do have a significant section of the, as it were, the left right now that's essentially not even a left party, but just a moderate party. And serve the donor class just as much as the Republicans do. And are paid not to do the same shit Republicans do. Republicans are paid to push an agenda. Mainstream Democrats are paid not to get in the way of that agenda. and are just kind of paid to be like, oh, they're doing it again. How do they get away with it every time?
It's basically neoliberalism, right?
Meanwhile, when you get a Democrat in office, Republicans try to fucking repeal Obamacare 500 times.
Yeah, they're a lot more politically effective.
We're outside the fucking state house with tea bags hanging off our fucking hats. It's like that's the response you're seeing on the other side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all this is going on, and Mitch McConnell is just stacking every federal judge that he can, and we're just sitting back and debating whether or not so and so is left enough or so and so is right enough, and they're winning the game.
Exactly, and personally, from my side, if at this point, if you're gonna vote for Biden, it doesn't matter to me if you're a fucking if you look at Nancy Pelosi and you say slay queen slay, or or you're a fucking Karen, like, it doesn't matter to me. If you're voting for Biden, then I'm riding with you in this moment. I am riding with you. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be riding with you. If things keep progressing in the way that they are, there's going to be a time where I drop you off out of the car. But as of right now, we're riding the same train together. We have the same goal. We have the same overall goal. And this is another thing the left doesn't really, a great deal of the left doesn't really understand, is like, to get to this point, the Republicans have had to embrace moderation in their own way, to get to the point where the Overton window has shifted as far as it has, and they were ready to do it again. Just before Donald Trump came in and allowed them to sort of push it even further and harder than they had before. Because if you look at the field that the Republicans had planned to have, before Donald Trump, you had some guys who are, good old fashioned Latino conservatives who hate Cuba, and even Jeb Bush speaks a little Espanol. And, they were going to go hard for that Latino vote. I know you had some women in there, so they're diversifying a little bit. So, they're giving you this facade of like, hey, we're kind of changed, we're reformed, but
performative
we're just spread the same bullshit we always do behind the scenes. But then Donald Trump just started saying the quiet parts loud and tore the mask off, and allowed people to sort of just push the same agenda, but times 5, and also with a heaping helping of, he says what's really on his mind. I used to not be able to say all this racist stuff going down the street without people looking at me like I'm a fucking idiot, but now I can just say it as loud as I want.
I put on the hat. Nothing matters.
With the hat on. With the hat on top of it. So, Republicans have had to, for years, build those kinds of coalitions of convenience just to get people a little further down the right and further down the right and further down the right. And, I would like to think, or at least the way I've been seeing things play out, unfortunately, people don't really sort of understand how bad things are until it affects them, which I think is partially what is slowly being realized when, as white America is seeing in the midst of these protests that, old white people and young white people are getting the shit beat out of them and shot out of them too, at these protests too. It's not just black people, and it's not just anarchists. It's their grandchildren, who are getting beaten up in the streets. Mm-hmm. And it's old white guys who look just like them who are getting shoved over and made to bleed on the concrete. I think in a way, the Republican Party may have kind of bitten off a little bit more than they can chew in the embrace of Donald Trump that they have made, which I partially understand their embrace there, because, these are the kinds of fires that they've been stoking for years and years and years. And they've been hoping to, over generations, just continue to push their corporate agenda while just like kind of quietly with dog whistling, just like blow on that fire just a little bit, just to get those voters into the voting booth to vote for them. Knowing that they're not, necessarily going to go that hard on their fear and their xenophobia. I mean, you saw it in the John McCain campaign where, you had that old lady who's like, this Obama guy, he's a secret Muslim and he's from Kenya and blah, 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 blah. And, and then John McCain's like, no, he's a real American. He's a real. Can you imagine how that would play out during a Trump rally?
Oh yeah, I know exactly how it would play out. Yeah.
How that would play out. Trump would just be like, well, a lot of people are saying that.
Yeah.
She said it.
She said it.
She said a lot of people have been saying that. It's true. It's true. A lot of people have been saying secret Muslim from Kenya. Secret Muslim. We've been seeing interesting things. I've had my people looking at his birth certificate. You know what I mean? That dynamic would play out totally different.
So fast. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah.
But again, it's like, those are the types of people that Republicans have always known have been voting for them, and that's because they send out those dog whistles to get them to vote for them. With this idea of like welfare queens and people who are skating for free off the system and moochers and leechers and, people like the gays and the gay agenda and the war on Christmas and everybody who's different than you is a threat to your way of life and this, that, and the other thing. But Trump just really kind of took advantage of that in a big, big way. And, unfortunately, there is a section of America that's kind of responding to that really negatively. I think to a lot of people, because of Trump and who he is and what he represents, thought he had a bit of an X factor or something, and thought that maybe he wouldn't govern as crazily as he campaigns, but he actually governs crazier than he campaigns. And I think we could be looking at a win in November if Republicans haven't gerrymandered shit so hard that it's basically impossible to get a win anywhere.
No mail-in voting too. That'll be nice.
Yeah, no mail-in voting too during a pandemic where it just so happens that the left side of the aisle is the side that actually acknowledges the pandemic exists, which is an important part of what I was talking about earlier. Because once you've packed the pandemic into the culture war, then people who believe the pandemic are basically the same group of people who think that America is dumb and they hate the flag and they kneel during the anthem and they think abortions are cool, and you don't want to associate with that group of people because that's totally antithetical to your point of view and everything that you believe in. So they know what they're doing, and but again, I think I feel blessed that I could speak as freely on this stuff as I can, because at the end of the day, like, I don't know, if a Bernie voter doesn't like the fucking fact that I don't like Bernie or bust, I mean, whatever, fuck you. I do reviews, you're listening to the music reviewer guy at the end of the day. You could be pissed at me over this opinion, but 4 years from now, you're probably going to be curious as to what I think about the new Fiona Apple record. So,
and that's going to be a good album too.
Yeah, granted, we're not all dead by then. So.
Hey friend, thanks for watching. Before we bombard you with all of our shameless links, we want you to bombard us. Do you have a worker co-op business or local union you'd like us to advertise at the end of our episode for free? So, if you'd like ears on your worker co-op, go down to weareserfs.com. And while you're there, join the Discord, because it's filled with righteous guys, gals, and MPals. Finally, come check us out on Twitch Live 5 days a week by going to twitch.tv/theserftv. Yeah. To our lords, Ricky Pilgrim, I'm Raft, Tomospone, Nine Tails Cosmic Fox, Hans Josephine, and Corpse Harvester, we bow meekly for your pleasure. To our Knights of the Round Table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Byte, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Clement Chetskoff, Cooper Pilot, aka the Man with Large Balls, Political Puppy, Nick Davis, Ali May, and Alan R., we salute you. And to our many merchants and farmers, you have our undying loyalty.